So now that we know how to handle an absolute value in an inequality, we have two different methods for it. What if I start with an inequality that has a little bit more going on? What can I do with this inequality, absolute value of v plus 5 minus 6 is less than negative 5? What can I do with this to turn it into an inequality that we know what to do with?
Would you add 6 to both sides?
Let's add 6 to both sides. That's a great idea. That's informed by this reverse order of operations mentality, right? Which tells us that we should work with addition and subtraction first until that's all done, then multiplication and division, then worry about exponents, but most importantly the p. The p in SADMEP tells us that we want to work from the outside of our grouping symbols toward the inside when we're trying to isolate a variable. And so here, the absolute value bars around the v plus 5, those are playing the role of parentheses. Even though they're a little bit more informational than parentheses, they serve to group the v plus 5 together. And so that means that before we worry about the v plus 5, we have to worry about everything that's on the outside of the parentheses. We can do that by adding 6 to both sides of this inequality. And that's going to leave me on the left-hand side with just the absolute value of v plus 5. And on the right-hand side, it's going to leave me with negative 5 plus 6, positive 1. So when there is extra arithmetic happening on the outside of the absolute value bars, worry about that first. And it's not until we get it all the way down to this form, where now it's only an absolute value quantity on one side, that now is the time that we can employ either of those two methods that we just used to solve this inequality. Which method do you prefer? Should we try the first way where we keep it as an inequality and then we have to worry about ands and ors? Or should we try the second way where we solve the equality and slice up the number line? What do you prefer? 1 or 2? 1. 1? Like the first one? Okay, let's do the first one. So when we split this apart, we need to write three things. First of all, am I going to have an and or an or compounding these two inequalities? How do we know it's an and? Because it's a less than, yeah. So that's the first decision that we can make here. Less than turns into an and compound. And then, when we do split it apart, we're going to write the inequality twice. b plus 5 less than 1, b plus 5 less than 1. But then in one of those versions, what are we going to do? When the absolute value goes away, it leaves behind one copy of itself, but also, yeah, one copy of its opposite. So we'll put a minus around the quantity v plus 5. Okay. And so now we have a compound inequality that we can do something with. If I solve v plus 5 is less than 1, what do I end up with? Yeah, v is less than negative 4. And if I solve this one, well, this one has a little bit more work to do. So let's do that work. I would want to distribute the minus sign across these parentheses. That's going to give me minus v minus 5. Scrub this other parenthesis here. There we go. So minus v minus 5 is less than 1. Then I'll add 5 to both sides to give me minus v is less than 6. And then what's going to happen? Divide by negative 1. That's going to leave me with just v. It's going to give me a negative 6 over here. And what else is going to happen? Sign flips. There we go. And so we end up with v is less than negative 4 on the one hand, and v is greater than negative 6 on the other hand. And if I diagram both of those two things out, let me draw them in separate colors again, as usual. Maybe I'll make the one on the left red. So v is less than negative 4. That will give me an inequality that looks like that, right? It goes up to negative 4 with an open circle at the top. V is greater than negative 6. That's going to leave me with a open circle at negative 6 and shaded towards the right. And so if I'm compounding these two together with an and, what am I looking for here? I'm looking for where they overlap. And where do these two intervals overlap? From what to what?
Negative 6 to negative 4.
From negative 6 to negative 4, with an open circle at both sides and shading in between. So what's the interval notation look like for my answer? Parentheses or brackets?
Parentheses.
Parentheses. Great. And there's an inequality version, inequality method version of the solution for this one.